I am Davina Ramirez, recording for class in 356 on 124.22, and we're going to do the parts of the eye. The first part is the ciliary body, which is the circumferential tissue inside the eye composed of the ciliary muscle involved in the lens of accommodation and control of the intraocular pressure and thus the shape of the lens, and 70 ciliary processes that produce aqueous fluid. Next would be the cornea, and this is the second structure that the light strikes. It is a clear, transparent front part of the eye that covers the iris, pupil, and anterior chamber and provides most of an eye's optical power. It's also smooth, round, clear, and tough, and it's like a protective window. The function of the cornea is to let light rays enter the eye and converge the light rays. The pupil is a variable size black circular opening in the center of the iris that regulates the amount of light that enters the eye, and the pupil needs to be around in order to constrict. Next is the aqueous humor, and this is a clear watery fluid that fills the space between the back surface of the cornea and the front surface of the vitreous bathing the lens. Next is the iris, and the iris is the pigmented tissue lying behind the cornea that gives the color to the eye and controls the amount of light entering the eye by varying the size of the papillary opening. It functions like a camera, and the color of the iris affects how much light gets in. The iris controls light constantly, adapts to lighting changes, and is responsible for near point reading. Next is the lens, which is the natural lens of the eye. It's suspended by fine ligaments and attached between the ciliary processes. It has to be clear, and it has to have a power of about +16 and has to be pliable so it can control refraction. Next is the retina, and the retina is sensitive to light. The retina is the light-sensitive nerve tissue in the eye that converts images from the eye's optical system into electrical impulses that are sent along the optic nerve to the brain to interpret as vision. It forms a thin membranous lining of the rear 2/3 of the globe and consists of layers that include the two types of cells, the rods and cones, and there is no retina over the optic nerve, which causes a blind spot. That blind spot is where the optic nerve and blood vessels leave the eyeball, and the optic nerve is connected to the brain. It carries images to the brain where they are all processed, which then leads to the optic nerve, which is the largest sensory nerve of the eye, and it carries impulses to the sight. It carries impulses for sight from the retina to the brain, composed of the retinal nerve fibers that exit the ball through the optic disc, transverse the orbit, and pass through the optic foramen into the cranial cavity, where they meet the fibers from the optic nerve at the end of the optic. Next is the sclera, and this is the opaque, fibrous, tough, protective outer layer of the eye, which could also be the white of the eye, where it's directly continuous with the cornea in front of the sheath covering the optic nerve behind. The sclera also provides protection and form into the eye. Next is the vitreous humor, which is the transparent, colorless mass that fills the rear 2/3 of the eyeball between the lens and the retina, and it has to be clear so that light can pass through it, and it has to be there or the eye would collapse. The reflective surface is also called the tapetum lucidum, and it is a biologic reflector system that is a common feature in the eyes of vertebrates. It normally functions to provide the light-sensitive retinal cells which is also a second opportunity for the photoreceptor stimulation. The 3 common diseases that can affect adult and geriatric adults that I chose are presbyopia, glaucoma, and age-related macular degeneration. The first one is the gradual loss of the eye's ability to focus on nearby objects, and it is a natural part of aging. It usually becomes noticeable in the early to mid-40s and continues to worsen. The symptoms of this tend to be holding reading material farther away to make the letters clearer, and blurred vision at normal reading distance, and also eye strain or headaches after reading or doing close-up work. This causes damage in the cornea, the lens. The cornea is the clear dome-shaped front surface of the eye, and the lens is the clear structure about the size and shape of M&M candies. Both of these structures are related to this disease. Risk factors can be age, medical conditions, and drugs. Treatment for this can include prescription reading glasses, bifocals, trifocals, things like that. Contact lenses can also be used, and refractive surgery is also an option for more severe cases. It is important to teach the patient about checking their eyes regularly and about how to control chronic health conditions that can affect this, as well as protecting your eyes from the sun and protecting eye injuries. It's also important to educate the patient about eating healthy foods such as fruits, leafy greens, and other vegetables, as these contain high levels of oxidants as well as vitamin A that can be vital to maintaining the healthy vision in the patient. The next disease is glaucoma, which is a group of eye conditions that damage the optic nerve, the health of which is vital for good vision. This can be caused by abnormally high pressure in the eye, and it can also be caused with age. The symptoms of this include patchy blind spots in your eye, severe headache, eye pain, nausea and vomiting, blurred vision, halos around the eye, and eye redness. And it often happens in people over 60. It is important to teach the patient about knowing their family history, if this runs in it, to get regular checks about exercise, safety, to reduce the eye pressure, and to take prescribed eye drops regularly to also prevent the eye pressure. Wearing eye protection can also be important, as serious eye injuries can lead to glaucoma. The last one is age-related macular degeneration, which is an eye disease that can get worse over time, and it happens when the small central portion of the retina, called the macula, wears down, and the retina is the light that's sensing nerve tissue at the back of the eye. The symptoms of this would be worse or less clear vision, dark blurry areas in the center of vision, and worse or different color perception. This can be diagnosed through a routine eye exam, which is why it is important to teach patients about how necessary they are, and it can also be treated through laser therapy and photodynamic laser therapy, as well as low vision aids depending on the severity of it. Patients can be taught about the importance of taking supplements like vitamin C, E, and zinc and copper to see what can help them increase their vision.